It's okay. We're back. All right, and we're back. Hey. Hope you guys enjoyed some of those Bernie bits. The memes have not gotten old yet, at least to me. It might just be me, but hey, I'll still keep making the videos then. Thank you.
No, that was a collage of them. So obviously the internet's still making them. So
the internet's still crazy about it. And that was just a portion of them. Like I cut a bunch out that aren't in there. Yeah. Anyways, rough transition into our deep dive that we have going on. The new nerd. The idea of what it means to be a nerd is changing rapidly. One of our first conversations that we ever had on the very first Geek Life ever, and I'm not talking about here on Twitch, I am talking about on the radio show back in the day at the University of Alabama. Roll Tide.
Roll Tide, roll.
Roll Tide, roll. And the first conversation we ever had on Geek Life was about geek culture becoming pop culture, okay? And how that shit has affected our daily lives. Nerds have gone from being the target of high school bullies to bullying rich Wall Street hedge fund owners themselves. Tonight, we're going to the moon to explore all the nuances between the veteran outcast geeks and the Chad nerds of today. Let's start simple and broad. Jake, what does it mean to be a nerd in 2021?
Oh man, I think it's kind of a loaded question because we've talked about it a few times. It's one of those where I think, and it just depends on your definition of nerd, right? I think to me, a nerd is anybody who's like really, really just into anything, right? Like I've always considered it to be like, you can be a sports nerd. I know people who can rattle off like what Peyton Manning's stats were, his MVP seasons, and what years those were, and like who was the Super Bowl or who was the MVP of certain Super Bowls, or who won the World Series certain years. And like to me, that is kind of like it's being a nerd, right? But present day, like it's as everything that was considered like Revenge of the Nerd style nerds, right? Like computers and video games and like, all the stuff that the 80s tried to say was for losers, which is hilarious, right? The Bill Gates one day is getting his head dunked in the toilet and the next day is the richest man on the planet, and it's just like that shift is what it means to be a nerd in 2021. It's basically everybody's a nerd in some level. If you have a hobby that you're super into, you can be a nerd in it, right? And so I think that term in general has just gotten so broad and so diluted that it's not what it used to be, where you were just some guy with glasses and a pocket protector, right? Like, crunching numbers. Like I've always been so perplexed by like the mainstream media idea of what a nerd is, especially back in the day. Like that's even changed in how we, show it now. Like, you'll have an outcast or whatever, but like now we have new tropes, right? Like I work at a tech company. And so people are just like, oh, so you must always wear hoodies. And so, and it's just like, well, yeah, right. But it's mostly for comfort. It's not, it's not like it's part of the uniform, but yeah, anyway, long story short,
vouch for this tech company hoodie.
Yeah, no, they always like it's the hoodies versus the suits, right? Like, we're rocking hoodies and everybody in Wall Street and everything suit guys, but they're both like, supposedly making money.
Trying to be it to be a trope, but if the trope fits and it fits comfortably in most weathers,
Exactly. But I mean, I guess long story short, I don't really even know what it means to be a nerd in 2021 besides that, we're all nerds in a way. I feel like that anyway. I even think, and this is going to be controversial, the QAnon folks are nerds for that shit. Like they got so deep into it, it became a lifestyle. They're getting tattoos. They bought flags. Like who here hasn't owned a flag for like maybe, or not a flag for it, but maybe some sort of Assassin's Creed paraphernalia or Halo stuff. And like, but we never stormed a Capitol for it.
There were nerds in the group. Okay, for sure. I think that there is a distinguishable difference between cult members and nerds because like, it's
a cult, but a religious nerd.
I can give you a strong distinction. Okay, I would have been, and I know plenty of people that were Harry Potter nerds. Okay, they were very passionate about Harry Potter. But when J.K. Rowling said what she said and did all the things and became transphobic as fuck, especially my trans friends, they were no longer Harry Potter nerds. They knew a lot about it. They weren't very passionate about it. They don't like showing, their knowledge about it, and they might like talking about the stories, but it's all forever kind of scarred by what J.K. Rowling has done. They do not. people can leave cults. Yes, it's possible, but it's very, very rare. And the nature of cults, in my opinion, is to cycle people back into it. And I think that there is a distinction between something that you can obsess over and love rationally versus something that you can obsess over and love irrationally, I guess is how I would put it.
I would say the line
with that
hobby.
said,
it's hobby.
Go ahead. What?
Like I would just say that line is hobby. Like, if you're really extremely into something, but it's just a hobby, then you're a nerd about it, right? Like if you're trying to set it up. But if you're extremely into something and it consumes your entire life so much that you perform terrorist attacks, it's no longer a nerd thing.
Yeah. I think that's the case. But even with that said, there were undeniably nerds within that. I mean, there was that guy that came up, and this is not a direction I thought this conversation was going to be going about the new nerd, but here we are. There was that guy that everyone thought he was an Antifa communist because they thought he had a hammer and sickle tattoo on his wrist, but it was not Dishonored. That. It was from Dishonored. Yes, It was the disbanded or something like that. But anyways, like that brought up a whole conversation on and Jake, I think you've talked to me about this a lot. Whereas when we were talking about the Gina Carano story, right? You were saying for me, it puts a it's a bad taste in my mouth seeing Gina Carano. I keep on mispronouncing her name.
She mispronounce yours and not care about it.
That's true. Big facts. Big touche. Anyways, she seeing her on screen and everything like that, it still puts like a slight taste in my mouth. Like I don't want to like that character as much as I wanted to like that character before because of the actress playing her and because of the public stances that she's made. She's made that part of her brand image, and so you can't separate those two things, especially when you're proud of it and you beat your chest about it. And you said, Jake, these people, as crazy and as batshit as we see themselves as heroes in their own story. They see themselves as the Cara Dunes out there. Yeah. And, it is something that you have to keep in mind with the new nerd as well, is that you can be emboldened by this and by your nerddom. And I think that once you're emboldened by your nerddom to do something irrational, I think it crosses a line, as you were saying, Jake.
The Boys got into that too.
Yeah.
And that was, season 2 specifically got into, what makes somebody go from being what's essentially an enthusiast to, someone who's obsessive. And so I think that's I know it's like you said, I didn't expect it to go that way, but I think that's the line that draws from to the new nerd. Cause I think we're all nerds about something. Right. And so there's no longer this stereotypical, just lone wolf loser nerd kid. It's literally everybody's kind of we're all on the same board. Now it's are you just a nerd about it? Or are you fucking crazy about it?
Stark difference between the two.
Exactly. Yeah, stark difference. Sex, what do you think about this? What does it mean to be a nerd in 2021?
Oh man. That's again, like Jake said, it's a loaded question. What it means to be a nerd in 2021. Just piggybacking off anything that you have a deep interest in that you enjoy doing, socially, as a hobby, anything like that, it can be considered, you as a nerd. I will just use me, for instance. In high school, I was in band. So I was a band nerd. You know what I'm saying? That's just, right. What it was. And this is my thought process for most nerds. And if correct me if I'm wrong, you don't care what other people have to say or think about what you're nerdy for. Especially with me, because man, I tell you, in every click, you know what I'm saying, there's something for you and that resonates with you. So in 2021, I think it's where 20-30 years ago, oh, you're a nerd, that's not cool. In 2021, you're a nerd now. Oh, what are you a nerd for? It's there's inquiry now instead of spit in your face, drop your books, and kick you down the hallway. You know what I'm saying? It's
right.
Can we talk at Starbucks, for lack of a different place to talk at, about what it is you're into? So that's me.
I agree. I think that what it means to be a nerd in 2021 is completely different than what it looked like even when, you know, some of those first Spider-Man movies were coming out. Like it looked completely different. And I think that there's a lot of things that play into what made that transition. You know, not too long ago, nerds were still social outcasts. That some nerds still are. Hell, people accredited scientists, people still treat accredited scientists like fucking high school Poindexters half the time. But then again, parts of our country have elevated Fauci to a god level. So maybe, you know, there is some hope. Same can be said for a variety of nerds like Kevin Smith and Neil deGrasse Tyson. I mean, nerds on, again, very, very different levels here that we're talking about. But these are very popular people, right? How has nerd culture become pop culture, Sax?
For me, it's become pop culture in a couple of different ways. I want to say mostly due to, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this is just opinion. I believe superhero movies. Them hitting the box office has made it so world widely acceptable.
Yeah.
And people going crazy about that. And in video games as well, where you figure 30 years ago, there weren't as many people playing video games. There's not as many people playing video games 10 years ago than there is today. And then with the pandemic still going on, it's been in progress for a year now, there are even more people playing video games. So it's like, you're home. What are you doing? You're nerding out doing something, whether you're on Netflix, whether you're on Amazon Prime, whether you're on a video game, you're doing something like that. And it's become a part of the culture so strong that I really don't see how society today would cope with even the pandemic without nerd pop culture. And that's even considering like even Japanese anime, all of that, like that 100%, it's like is in the pop culture, and that's on the rise. You know what I mean? It's like if you looked at like one of my favorite animes, Fist of the North Star, that's something made in the 80s. You know what I'm saying? And then you look at Demon Slayer, shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's like a very, very different, you know. But Fist of the North Star made way for Dragon Ball, which made way for Naruto, which made way for My Hero Academia. You know what I'm saying? It kind of just did that kind of thing where over time, these things began to get more popular. And yeah, that's how it became pop culture, because more people are into it. And they're like, you know what? This is not as weird as I thought it was. And I kind of like it.
It's interesting because when we talked to Jim Viscardi, like you were saying, Sax, it was very much that he referenced the first Avengers movie as a big turning point for nerd culture and becoming pop culture. And I think that is a good, you know, kind of like that was a big period of time when that was becoming, you know, something that it was, you know, just a couple of people who were obsessed over comic books. And I mean, that was like, you know, the first generation of Marvel. That's right when Captain America was wrapping up. And then all of a sudden, like, you know, after Captain America, Iron Man, and the first Thor movie came out, you know, it all of a sudden the average moviegoer was going to see movies about comic book superheroes and not just, you know, the Poindexter stereotypical nerds that you used to see. What do you think was a good turning point, Jake, for nerd culture becoming pop culture?
I think it's the consolidation of the internet. Really is one of the big ones. I mean, back in the day, there was so many websites. I think your like normal everyday person hopping on the computer was just like, I'm going to check Yahoo, you know, like I'm, you know, like I'm just going to go here, look at this one thing. There's too much going on. With the consolidation of like content through Facebook and Twitter and social media in general, but mostly like things like YouTube even, right? I think that's just catapulted things, right? Like I think definitely like, you know, certain movies like Avengers, I think, you know, putting Robert Downey Jr. crushing it as Iron Man in the first movie right out the gate, just had people going like, holy shit, this is not just a good superhero movie. This is just a good movie, you know, like, and so it's just like, and it made it, you know, very like, you know, widespread audience and everything. But to me, it's like, it's memes. It's the internet becoming a thing. It's the videos. It's everybody kind of like consolidating together. And basically like, you know, people who wouldn't usually see a meme about One Punch Man, seeing a meme about it and going, wait, what's this anime about? And someone's like, oh, it's this overpowered guy. And then like, boom, it's one of the, you know, one of the more famous animes out, you know, like, and so same with like, My Hero Academia, like you said, like there's a lot of anime that I gave a try because I grew up on Dragon Ball, then like, you know, fell off because I wasn't like a hardcore anime guy or anything like that. But then through the pandemic and everything, you know, and all the memes and you see everybody talking about, you know, anime and fucking hentai porn and shit on Reddit. And you're just like, well,
shout out to the hentai porn.
And so you're like, well, let me check out what these people are talking about. Classroom, what? You know, like, but anyway, like, it's just one of those where I think the internet evolving to where it is today, which, you know, good for good or bad, because, you know, it's kind of like crazy that everybody almost gets all of their content from like 5 places. And so, you know, like, but that's kind of, you know, we're all there. All of us, all the people are on Facebook. We're on Twitter. We're here on Twitch. You know, we're either on Reddit. Like there's really not as many places to go for content that there used to be. And so that consolidation has pretty much made it to where like pop culture, nerd culture is a part of the culture, right?
Right. No, absolutely. I mean, I think, you know, that's it's interesting you say that, you know, the Snyder Cut, GameStop, cancel culture, it seems like fans have more power than ever. You know, just as you were talking about how they've been able to kind of turn nerd culture into pop culture, the power shift has way gone now into the fans' favor, right? The new nerd can manipulate markets, bully production studios into releasing fired directors' versions, and end careers. Okay, like, do nerds have more power than ever? And is it too much power, Jake?
I think I think things are just getting more democratized, I guess is the word I would use for it. Like, you know, more people are having a say in with the internet. Like, look at things like Sonic. You know, like Sonic the Hedgehog, they were ready to push that movie out. They thought they had a great one. They thought they had something that people were going to be like nostalgic about. They would bring on some kids and make it a whole new thing. We're bringing Sonic back, baby. Right. And then they produced a trailer that looked like Sonic. And, you know, and everybody was just like, what the fuck is this? What is he got teeth? You know, like, you know, like what are those little rounded teeth things? And so like, it's just one of those where like, I think like, you know, we found out that like through the internet, which gives us all a voice and we can put that collectively together, that we could push these people into making decisions that before they made in vacuums. And so I don't know if it's too much power, you know, like we'll have to see. I don't think like, you know, bullying studios and, you know, like even hedge funds and shit like that. Like, come on, like it's supposed to be, America's supposed to be a free market capitalism. So if hedge funds fail, they fucking fail. Maybe you shouldn't have put your money into that hedge fund, right? Like that's just how it's supposed to go. And so like now, does it go that way? Nah, that's a deep dive for another day. You know, obviously the rich can make some rules up and they get to play by them and other people don't. But at the same time, like we've noticed that even through the internet, Wall Street bets, that we can still put a squeeze on them. You know, we may not be able to completely take them down, but we can make them hurt, you know? And so it's just one of those where I don't know if it's too much power. I hope it doesn't get checked. That's the one thing that does scare me about the future of the internet is that like with things being consolidated the way they are, and even though I'm not like this is, let me go ahead and get this out of the way. I am totally for Parler being essentially scorched earth, right? Like that place was a fucking sex pool, right? And so it's like, you know, get that out of there. But it also kind of like sets up cesspool, yeah. And so it kind of like sets up this.
Sounds fun.
Dude, you spelled Star Wars as one word multiple times on the script. Don't even.
That's fair.
No.
That's fair. That's fair.
But so like, you know, with that place being as bad as it was, it needed to be scorched earth, but it does set it up to where like, you know, fuck, you know, when like we got to watch censorship. That's all like, you know, like definitely that needed to be shut down. But the fact that everything's only on Facebook or Twitter, like, oh man, that's going to be scary one day in my opinion. So you got to watch it. I won't ramble about that for too long.
No, I think you made some great points. Sax, what do you think? Do nerds have, since they have more power than ever, is it too much power?
I would say
or not enough.
Yeah. That's funny. I would say that nerds have I would say more influence, more of a voice than previously, for sure. And is it too much power? That's debatable. 100%. I guess it depends on what spectrum that you're on. To be able to, and it's a great example in using the Sonic movie, stop the entire release of a movie that was ready to go, like
Right.
theaters, and you had something like over 7 million or 700 million dislikes on your trailer on YouTube, as you were talking about the internet, because this in like a part of the reason the influence is bigger is because the internet exists in a
Right.
much more dominant way than it did not in back in the day. Even
Right.
hell, like some of you around my age, who the hell here remembers those big ass Apple computers in school? So you're
I
talking
do.
about my time now. So you're talking about my time in school. Internet wasn't popping like that the way that it is now. So you get somebody with some, some decent bandwidth, a nice fiber optic cable. They
Right.
Twitter up some things really, really decisive to make a company do or not do a thing. So yes, the influence there. Want to call it power? Sure, we can call it that. Is it too much? I tell you what, if if ISPs decide to say, all right, we're done, then that power goes, because without the
Yeah.
internet, you don't have that. And
Yeah.
that's where everything comes from. So that's me.
That's true. That's true. I mean,
Which is scary. There's
Yeah,
it is
only a
scary.
handful. There's only a handful of those guys, and they're just allowing this shit to happen for right now. Even though I think Obama and making things like internet consensually are considered I think it's a basic essential right or something like that. That's why it's at public libraries. I think there will always be some sort of government-backed internet. There's got to be, right? Like
Right.
I don't know.
thought those
I would hate to live in a
thought those
future
were
without it.
taken away, but I may be mistaken. I would need to get caught up on that.
Did Trump take away computers from
No,
libraries?
not computers from libraries, Jake. The defining of
He
it
was
as a
bad,
public
man. He
utility.
wasn't that bad. He didn't pull the computers from libraries, Dotson.
Take
I draw
all
the line.
library computers.
If he would have done that,
that would have lost my shit. Yeah, you're right. But no, I thought he did change it to make it so that it wasn't
considered a human right.
considered. Yes,
Basic human right. Is that what
basic
it is?
utility? Is
Basic
what it
utility.
is.
Yeah.
Public utility is what I'm trying to say.
Well,
I mean, shit, some houses are run off of internet and Wi-Fi. So
I know. Yeah, some
That's
people.
true.
Yeah, if the grid went down, it'd be crazy.
That would be crazy.
it's like,
But at any time, production companies and studios could just Robin Hood that shit, right? They could just do nothing and produce. I guess the Robin Hood equivalent in the movie equation is like do nothing and produce cheap animated movies to only entertain kids and make billions and not really try to do.
Minions 12.
Right? I think that's the short selling of entertainment, isn't it? I don't know. Who has more power? Executive producers who have the money to create, or the consumer who funds it? And how has that changed over the years, Sax?
I'll say this. In the past, the consumer didn't have the power at all.
Right.
That's
why we got Super Mario Brothers, the movie.
Let's.
It's a banger, dude.
I'm gonna stick to my point. So in the beginning, it was just the executive producers that had the power to do what they do. Today, the executive producers still have the power to do what they want to do. But like I said earlier, because of the internet, because of the power of what nerds have now with being able to get on the internet and say what it is they want to say and make things happen, they definitely have much more influence in what it is they want and what it is they expect and what it is they're looking for. Because you don't get stuff just like the Mario movie, you get the Mortal Kombat movie, you get the Street Fighter movie, you get all of that stuff that was happening that was trash. And then you've got people now that are like, hey, so I have a say in what it is I want and what I'm looking for. And because I guarantee you, Dragon Ball Evolution wouldn't have been a thing if more people had something to say about it up front. And I'm not going to go too far into that, but I'm going to let that go. Yeah.
Jake, what about you? Who has more power? Executive producers, the money to create, or consumers who fund it?
I think honestly, it's one of the things that have been happening is that less decisions about entertainment's being less and less decisions are being made in vacuums, and more and more of the producers are actually fans. You see like Kevin Smith getting his shot, to produce things. You see, guys like, basically like the dude who did all of the Marvel stuff and all of, like Star Wars, Mando and everything, Kevin Ferg. And so, or Fergie or whatever. Feige. Yes. I Googled how to say it and then I always forget. And so don't do drugs in high school, kids. But anyway, like, that dude, he's a fan of the culture. And so they've let him create. And that's, one of the biggest things is we're getting more and more fans who grew up watching Star Wars, creating Star Wars. Right. And it's just because like that's kind of like how the Passions of Time works. Right. Like a movie's made in the 70s, kids grew up watching them and now they're going to be making them. It's kind of like the reason I have a theory. The reason why TikToks are so good is because all the kids that are good at TikToks grew up watching Vines. Right. And so, like the reason why they're good at it is because they grew up watching it. And so like that's, I think it's one of those where we've got more fans creating content than ever. And, we do get to have our say during like they do more test screenings. There's just less stuff made in vacuums. I honestly believe whoever the fuck was at a test screening of the first Mario movie, that one back in the day or whatever, like they probably were like, no, it's okay. And it was like, well, have you ever played a Mario game? Nah, never played a Mario game. Like literally 10 out of 10 people in the room were like, nah, I never played a video game. What the fuck do I look like? I go to the movies. And they were like, oh, it's an okay movie. And then everybody who watched it was just like, oh my God, have you ever played a Mario game? And they were like, no one here did. No one here like ever played one. And so now though, if they were to remake a Mario movie, you would assume they would get somebody who's at least played a Mario game at this point, like, because it's been around forever. And so, which this is not a call to Hollywood to make a new Mario movie. You can keep it as a game.
Yeah. I mean, I see a power shift back to the consumer, as we talked about, and probably some of the earlier sections. Yeah. But I agree with you, Jake, mostly that it's coming from a valuing of the source material. Right. In previous years, whether a superhero or comic book movie related was approaching, the debate on whether or not it would stick to its roots of the content was appropriate. Right. We saw what happened in X-Men Origins Wolverine to Deadpool. Thank God that had, another go at it. Was Spider-Man going to design his own web shooters, or they're gonna make it more of a superpower like the original trilogy did? Why is Batman using a gun, etc.? In recent years, you can see the swing back to more of the original source material. Do you think that swing back has benefited the new nerd, and does it benefit them, Jake?
I think it benefits I think the expanding of nerd culture, right? Like when we're trying to bring more people into some of this stuff, sticking to the source material is going to be the best. Like to put it, let me give a great example. Honestly, if I were to try to get somebody into Death Note, the manga's good, the anime's good. I would not be showing them the Netflix original film Death Note, to be like, yo, come in and check this out. But if they would have crushed that movie, a movie would be a great way to get somebody to watch what is essentially like a 70 episode anime that may seem a little daunting, right? But I mean, don't look at Bleach and some of the other ones. But I'm just saying, like, for somebody who's like a novice, I want to say that's like not big into anime, they may look at that amount of episodes and go, whoa, that's way too much time. Did they have a movie? And so, but most of the time, anime movies have been botched, and so it's the same with Dragon Ball, like you said, and that bastardization of Death Note that came out, and so I think like it's important to stick to the source material, because in the instances that they have, like with some of the more Marvel stuff that went super mainstream and everything, it's probably gotten more people back into comics that were never into comics. Like there's people who's read comics due to what's been essentially like an explosion of Marvel, fans than probably ever before. Like I started really getting back into comics due to what I would say has been an emergence of nerd culture. Things like Preacher being on television made me go, holy shit, Preacher's good. Can I read this? Like, is there more to this? Old Man Logan, while the movie was great, the comic's fucking amazing.
Right.
And so like, and way crazier than the movie could ever be. And so
Right.
anyway, I know I'm kind of just rambling now, but I think like the biggest thing is that, you know, the source material, if it's good source material, especially, it's going to continue to make people want to watch it. And so basically stick to it, you know?
I agree. If there was a bar graph that showed the popularity of Pokemon cards, I would feel it would show like a massive swing in a social acceptance and nerd culture, where you used to get beat up for bringing your Pokemon cards to school, and nowadays people ask, like, do you still have that Charizard I used to beat you up for?
Can I buy
it? How has the social acceptance of pop culture changed over time, and what caused that social resurgence? Sax?
I'd say it's a culmination of things. One of the things is obviously the internet's going to be the answer for a lot of this stuff. Right? A lot of people are posting stuff online. You see it, and it's like, oh, I hate it. Oh, I hate it. Well, I don't like it. I don't. Well, what is this? And it goes down that rabbit hole. You know what I'm saying? And then it becomes a little more acceptable. I'll say another thing: cons, TwitchCon, Comic-Con. You know what I'm saying? Gamescom, E3, stuff like that. These conferences and stuff like that definitely help also showcase all of this stuff, which makes it acceptable. And I'm going to say this: cosplayers. People who do cosplaying, who take the time to make an outfit, to make a costume, be a live action whatever. You know what I'm saying? It's an incredible attention to detail and all of that stuff. And so many people like it. Some people like it for the art of what it is. I'm going to be 100% honest. Some people like it because it can be very lewd. You know what I'm saying? And some people are into that.
Oh, yeah.
Hi. But that's either here. But I do appreciate the art of it, though, because there's some people that I follow. I'm like, oh, my God, this was just a really, really good job. And the more the people do it, it's like a majority minority thing. More people are definitely coming on to accepting of that and jumping on that bandwagon, if you will, than are not. Then, so let's say back like in the late, like, well, not late, but like early mid 90s to like now. Oh yeah, it's like starkly different as far as acceptance. And that's not a bad thing. It's a good thing because you learn to accept people. Well, at least you should.
Yeah, sure, at least you should. Exactly. It's weird to me to see, like, I remember working in college and I saw a bunch of cosplayers walk by to like a small convention in Tuscaloosa. And I like got off my shift to go take a picture with them, and everyone's like, oh, that's Dodson, he's just a nerd. And then like 3 years later, Suicide Squad comes out and I see those fuckers at the bar dressed up like Harley Quinn. It's like all of a sudden cosplay is mainstream. Because like years ago beforehand, right? Years before though, Harley Quinn was not that kind of character that was going to be, you're going to see at a bar on Halloween. It wasn't that level of social acceptance, I think, that it was really changed people's mind. But
same with Jokers. Heath Ledger, man. Heath Ledger nailing that performance made it to where like for the next 20 Halloweens you saw like, you know how I got these scars, and you're just like, like, yeah, I get it, you're all the Joker. Okay, fucking, I
think I've gone as the Joker like 3 or 4 times.
But see, like the difference is, especially like there used to be characters that you would only see at cons, right? Like, and I think like for a long time the Joker was one of those. You'd see Batman out on fucking Halloween, it's Batman, right? But the Joker, Harley Quinn especially, was one that you would only see certain people maybe do a cosplay of at a con or whatever. Now, like you said, thanks to movies like Suicide Squad, which, for whatever reason, I don't know. Margot Robbie is the only reason people cosplay as fucking Harley Quinn, because that movie, But anyway, but then you got things like Heath Ledger's performance as Joker. That was so amazing that literally everybody's like, I want to be Joker for Halloween,
Exactly. Yeah.
And it makes it more socially acceptable.
It does.
When the guy who crushed 10 Things I Hate About You is now the Joker, you're like, okay, I'll flex with that Joker.
Right. I'll see what's up. I'll see what's up with that Nolan film. With the new nerd at the helm, there has been a lot of changes. The new nerd launched the MCU into cinema history and has continued to build not only the largest fandoms, but some of the largest economic powerhouses in the world today.
Disney.
But have these changes actually made things better in a more important way? How has the shift from counterculture to pop culture created better or worse content as we've gotten into more economic success?
Ooh. Yeah, I think, oh man, because I really think that it's essentially like so it's two ways. I think of it as like definitely we've seen an increase in better content. And I think like, things stay in, the source material has improved. People have started doing that way more often. People have started listening to the fans more, right? Like when we've covered all of that, but it's like, still there's this whole thing where it being consolidated to just those small groups is dangerous, especially like Disney owning Star Wars and Marvel. And, so it's like they own the Disney adults, they own the Marvel people, and now they even own all of Star Wars. And so it's like they have a say in basically a lot of things that are important to nerd culture, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's just, for most of the part, it's made better content. But then also we gotta be careful for nostalgia grabbing. I think that's the biggest thing that's kind of scary with pop with nerd culture becoming essentially pop culture, is that people are going to start just mining for fucking nostalgia. And we've seen it, we've already seen it. I don't mean to say they're going to start it, because it's already started. Right. But and is that a bad thing? Sometimes it's not. Sometimes I want to see a new Gremlin movie. So, right. But definitely has led to what I would say overall has been better content, but sometimes has been less original, because we want to just hold on to the past so much. We want to continue to remake because it was such a cool thing from the 80s or 90s or even now the early 2000s. Right. And so it's like, there's this constant need to remake it. But why not, develop something new?
Right. Zach, same question to you. Has the economic success that's been brought up by counterculture becoming pop culture made better or worse content?
I'll answer this simply with this. A little bit of column A, a little column B. I'll say it in the way, and I'll use the MCU, and then I'll use the DCU. With the MCU, it's better because you bring back, because you figure what the Iron Man is 1960s. You know what I'm saying? That's when he dropped. So you're talking about time is going on. You figure the Robert Downey Jr. movie came out like in the 2008 is when
2009, I believe. Yeah, you're right on the money.
The first Iron Man movie came out. So Robert Downey Jr. did a phenomenal job as Tony Stark. He is Tony Stark. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Period.
And right. And Marvel had a plan from the word go, what it is they wanted to do. And they have done it successfully as far as the cinematic universe is concerned, at least in my opinion. Now, that's better. Now, let's talk about something that's worse. The DCU, which, in my opinion, I'm more of a DCU. I'm a DC fan more than I'm a Marvel fan normally.
Hey, I'm right there with you.
Characters. But what DC tried to do, which makes it worse, is try to play catch up. When you try to play catch up because something is hot, you end up doing yourself a disservice. The travesty that was the Batman versus Superman movie, the travesty that was the Suicide Squad movie, and the travesty that was, and I refuse to watch, the Justice League movie. You know what I'm saying? It's like you have these things come out, is because now you're trying to compete with Marvel, who had a game plan day one. And because you see the rapid success, you're trying to catch up. So that, for me, is where you can get, where it becomes pop culture, because it's like, oh yeah, Iron Man's popping, Captain America's popping, they popping. So let's get Batman popping. It's kind of hard. And then you had to come off the heels of Christopher Nolan's trilogy, and then have to try to come up. You had a realistic, as you could, Batman, and now you have to do the Dark Knight version of Batman, like the late 80s version of Batman for this movie, and try to hurry up. Oh, we got to get the Justice League movie out. No, take your time. And I guarantee you, if DCU would have taken their time, it would have been much better than what it's turned out. But that's an example of how it can be worse trying to compete with what is out.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more, especially as a DC fan. It's the multiverse, I guess, is their best bet at this point to revive. We don't need to go into how the DCU fixes their universe, but to your point, I think that my point of it is mostly that we have this concept of like a sellout when it comes to like bands and musicians and stuff like that. But I think that it's a mixed bag when it comes to content. You could say that like Star Wars, for example, they were just trying to make episodes 7, 8, and 9, and they really made some poor story choices with it. And I do feel that they were really just going for the cash grab, just going for a nostalgia thing for most of it. Now, Mandalorian is fantastic.
Yeah.
Both of which exist because more money was brought into the content, more money was brought into the fandom, and more more things are being produced, whether people liked it or not. So I think that it's just that is one example. It's just a mixed bag of what the economic success of it, unlike other businesses, does not determine whether or not you're going to get a better quality product, is I guess my big point.
Right.
You know?
No, 100%.